In this video, we delve into one of the most contentious and enduring mysteries of the JonBenet Ramsey case, in my opinion, which is the unidentified male DNA. Found on specific articles of JonBenet's clothing, this DNA has been at the center of debates surrounding the intruder theory and the possibility of a staged crime scene. We'll explore the nature of this DNA, where it was found, and how its presence, or lack thereof, across key pieces of evidence shapes our understanding of what happened on that fateful Christmas night. By drawing on credible sources, forensic analysis, and investigative reports, we aim to answer critical questions about this DNA's origins and its implications for the case. Could this DNA point to a stranger's involvement in JonBenet's death, or does its limited presence suggest contamination, secondary transfer, or even deliberate staging? We'll examine the forensic challenges surrounding touch DNA, explore potential mishandling of evidence, and analyze whether this evidence strengthens or undermines prevailing theories. As we progress, we'll also consider the broader context, how the timeline of events, the arrival of friends, and the family's activities on Christmas Day might intersect with this forensic puzzle. Together, these pieces form a picture that raises more questions than answers, but they also bring us closer to understanding the complexities of this case. The timeline of events surrounding JonBenet's death has been a subject of intense scrutiny. Patsy Ramsey is said to have made the 911 call somewhere between 5:35 a.m. and 5:45 a.m. On December 26th of 1996, she reported her daughter missing, and she mentioned a ransom note. According to news reports, police arrived at the home within 7 minutes. Yet, the estimated time of JonBenet's death is somewhere between midnight and 2 a.m. according to Melody Stanton. This leaves a significant gap of 3 to 5 hours where the activities of the Ramsey family remain unclear. During this critical time, the Ramseys stated that they had gone to bed shortly after returning home from a Christmas dinner at the White House, somewhere around 9 or 10 p.m. However, the ransom note was reportedly discovered by Patsy early in the morning. Forensic analysis of the note revealed inconsistencies, including the peculiar demand of $118,000, which seems to match John Ramsey's recent work bonus. John said that many of the individuals who worked with him and any tax expert that he worked with, whether at work or whether personally, knew the number, and it's possible that the intruder could have gotten a hold of that number, given that it was on all of his pay stubs and the intruder could have just seen a pay stub laying around. However, this little detail has still led to speculation that the note was written to mislead investigators, potentially by someone familiar with the Ramsey household. Additionally, the placement of JonBenet's body in the basement raises questions about when and how she was moved. Her body showed signs of blunt force trauma and strangulation, but there were no signs of forced entry into the home, which complicates the intruder theory. According to other news reports, this has led some investigators to believe that the crime scene may have been staged to divert suspicion. Even the 911 call itself has been scrutinized. Experts noted that Patsy seemed unusually composed, yet fragments of the call's audio seemed to suggest other voices could be heard in the background, maybe potentially Burke or John Ramsey. According to other news sources, the call raises questions about who was awake and active in the household during those early morning hours. Furthermore, the timeline between Patsy's call to 911 and her call to friends, Fleet White, and John Fernie and others seems to raise eyebrows. Did Patsy call her friends immediately after calling the cops, or did she wait? According to the Denver Post, the friends that Patsy called seem to have arrived almost as quickly as 911, which raises questions about their proximity and the state of readiness that they were in when they received the call from Patsy. The arrival of the Ramseys' friends at their home shortly after the 911 call has also been a critical point of analysis. Again, Patsy reportedly called Fleet and Priscilla White, as well as John and Barbara Fernie, as well as their pastor, to come over, and maybe in some reports, the housekeeper. According to the Denver Post, they arrived quickly, raising questions about whether they were already awake or had prior knowledge of the unfolding events. The state of their appearance might also need to be questioned. What do I mean by that? The guests who showed up, were they still in pajamas, or were they fully dressed, as if they had not been asleep? Maybe even possibly wearing clothes from the previous evening. These details and understanding them could provide insights into their activities during the night. Similarly, the Ramseys' own clothing has raised suspicions, because we know that Patsy was reportedly still wearing the clothes that she had worn the previous evening, though she states that she set them to the side and decided to put them back on, while John's attire at the time has not been thoroughly documented. We know that he says that he was taking a shower, but we don't know if he put the same clothes back on. But were these signs of a family that had been awake for much of the night, or just simply, as they say, putting on the same clothes in a rush to leave the next day? Another question revolves around the communication between the Ramseys and their friends. Modern forensic techniques can analyze phone records to determine who was contacted and when. Did Patsy make calls to her friends immediately after discovering the note? Or were these calls part of a coordinated effort to create an alibi? Subpoenaed phone records could potentially clarify this timeline, but the investigation doesn't seem to have pursued this angle rigorously, or it's very hard to find these records. Finally, the actions and testimonies of the friends seems to have been inconsistent. For example, Fleet White's later estrangement from the Ramseys has fueled theories that he may have disagreed with their version of events, or suspected foul play, or had issues with the Ramseys seeking interviews with TV networks. According to other news reports, this rift highlights potential cracks in the narrative presented by the family and their close circle. It should be noted then that the Christmas timeline does seem a little unusual. The events of Christmas Day itself offer additional clues. The Ramseys were planning to fly to Michigan early on December 26th, but they attended a dinner party hosted by Fleet White on Christmas night. This gathering raises questions. Was this merely just a social event for everyone? Or does this social event on Christmas Day indicate something about the closeness of the relationships, which might extend to assisting in a cover-up if needed? The dinner party at the Whites' residence included several families, and the interactions during this event have been analyzed for potential clues. According to Denver Post, Denver Westward, the children played together while the adults socialized, with no reported incidents. John may have mentioned in his book, The Death of Innocence, that there was some scrappy back and forth between Fleet White and 911. Maybe he called 911 by mistake and John was confused as to why. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. What is important is to understand the timeline of the party and the Ramseys' departure in being critical to establishing the proper sequence of events leading up to JonBenet's death. What was done before going home? Did they stop and visit a few people and pass out presents? Did they stop and carol a little bit? What happened before they got home? What time did they actually leave the party? There are John's theories, and then there are questions around if those theories are actually true. Additionally, the decision to attend a social gathering in the first place, knowing that you have to fly out early in the morning, is also questionable. Some theories suggest that this could indicate an attempt to try to establish or give an alibi. This done in hopes to kind of reframe or restructure the timeline to fit properly into what was said to have happened to JonBenet. Furthermore, were all of the dinner guests investigated thoroughly? Some attendees were questioned as part of routine inquiries, but others may have escaped scrutiny. Understanding who was present and why this dinner was planned so late on Christmas Day could shed light on the dynamics between the Ramseys and their friends. We also have to question how close all of the neighbors that were invited over lived to the Ramseys. Without a doubt, they were relatively close, but how close? Even if they received a phone call, would they have been there in the time allotted or speculated? How realistic is this for us to expect them to get up and be able to get their clothes on and make it down to the Ramseys' residence within 10 to 15 minutes from a dead sleep? It's possible that the frightening and the terror and the horror of hearing their friend has lost a child would jolt them out of their sleep, of course, but still something to be questioned. Again, did they jump up at the request of the Ramseys early in the morning, as Patsy and John say they did? Or were they ready and prepared for the call from Patsy and John? Allegedly. Now we take a deeper look at the unidentified male DNA found on JonBenet Ramsey's clothing that has become one of the most debated pieces of evidence in this case. Its characterization as touch DNA raises significant questions about how it was deposited and what it reveals about the events of that night. The question we might ask is, where was the DNA found? According to some reports by 9 News, the unidentified male DNA was first found on the waistband of JonBenet's undergarments during tests conducted in '97. Additionally, DNA matching this profile was discovered on her long johns in 2008. Interestingly, this DNA was not found on her skin or under her fingernails in any real significance, or on any of the key items tied to the crime scene, such as the flashlight or the garrote. This leads me to question secondary transfer and contamination risks. One plausible explanation for the DNA's presence is secondary transfer. There are studies that have shown that touch DNA can easily transfer during garment manufacturing or packaging. Of course, we understand that. However, this possibility casts doubt on whether the DNA was related to the